Hi, I'm Richard Maraj, Senior Minister at Unity of Phoenix Spiritual Center, and I want to thank you for visiting our website and for tuning in to today's message. If you feel inspired by today's talk, I really encourage you to make a donation by hitting that button below and making a contribution to this ministry. It'll allow us to continue these messages online and to do the great work we do here at Unity of Phoenix, which is to inspire people to live better lives. So thanks for tuning in, thanks for your support, and we hope to see you at a Sunday real soon.
Morning again, everyone. And a shout out to everybody who tunes in and watches us online. He is risen. He is alive. He lives. And I don't know how anybody can not get inspired and uplifted, at Easter time. Hearing those words you get so excited, you get so jazzed, so joyful, and so hopeful. The resurrection is a miraculous occurrence that deserves all of our celebration and all of our appreciation and all of our acknowledgement. The reason I believe that we get so inspired and uplifted by it is something I'm not even sure if we realize, that it is resonating with us at the depth of our soul, because we are connected with that power of life, that power to rise, that power to overcome. Jesus said he came that we may have life and have it more abundantly. And we often think of Easter as that passport to eternity, as that abundance is equal to more life, quantity. But I think it's more. I think that the gift of an abundant life is more about a quality life. He came that we have a more richer and deeper and fuller and more profound experience of life. That's why I find it strange that every year we celebrate the resurrection, celebrate Easter, we get all excited and jazzed and enjoy it. Then we go back to living life cautiously and tentatively and sometimes fearfully. We go back to holding back from going after our goals and dreams. We tend to play safe, we tend to play small, and we tend to settle. We settle in our relationships, we settle in our work, and we often allow what other people's opinions and ideas and feelings are to influence how we live, rather than being true to ourselves, rather than listening to our hearts and listening to our intuition. We end up living, but living not as fulfillingly and not as fully as we can actually live. And all year we're searching, and sometimes I don't even know if we know what we're searching for. The mystic Joseph Campbell said this. He said, most people say or think that they're seeking the meaning of life. But he said that's not what they're seeking. He said what we're all actually seeking is an experience of being fully alive. That sometimes we hold back and aren't really living. And he's saying we're actually looking for that rapture of being fully alive, which is to allow the work that we do physically here to resonate with our innermost being and to connect with what our soul is calling us to do. This promise of the resurrection is alive. This life-renewing, life-revitalizing, transforming power is available to us for us to live life more abundantly. The question is, are we using it? How many people have at least one area in your life that you're holding back and not living quite as fulfilling a life as you could live? Great, about 10 people, perfect. And I wrote this for 10, it's amazing. And the question is, why? If we have this gift to live more abundantly, if we have this great demonstration of overcoming, why are we settling? Why aren't we living as fully? We get excited hearing, he is alive. He lives. We should really be saying, am I alive? Am I really living? So this morning I want to look at the message and the lessons and the truths of Easter to help us live, really live. And the first one is that we need to make space for silence. We need to make space for silence. I was talking to Craig the other day, and he gave me a line that just caught me. And he said, space is where the work happens. And sometimes in our lives, we don't create any space for space. And he says, even in playing the piano, sometimes not creating that space forces you to rush and play and lean forward. He says, sometimes your muscles get more tense and tight. But when you do that, you don't always listen to the other people, and the music kind of loses some of its oomph. He said it loses its ability to land, to penetrate and have the impact that it can have But when you consciously create space, that he says you sit back, you relax, you play more deeply, listen more carefully, and the quality of the music is not only expressed, but also it is penetrated and received in a greater way. And he calls it creating space between the phrases. And he said, creating space between the phrases works whether you're singing a song, it has an impact, or whether you're speaking words. So I thought I'd give you an example. So I decided to work on practice singing a song to impress you with space and between the phrases. And then a friend of mine heard me practicing and said, Richard, do you really think that it would be good for you to stretch the bounds of your congregation's love for you on your return by singing to them? He said, I'd recommend you not. And so I've decided to give an example of the space between the phrases in a spoken way of something we are familiar with, and that is the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. With a little space of just acknowledging, our Father, comma, who art in heaven, comma, hallowed be thy name, period. Thy kingdom come, comma, thy will be done on earth, comma, as it is in heaven, period. Did you notice something as simple as punctuation, creating a pause, space, between the phrases, makes the impact of the word even more powerful? Space is where the work happens. And what he meant by that is it doesn't come naturally to us. We tend to want to go quickly, so we need to remind ourselves to create the space and pause. And that when we do, the output and outcome tends to be better because we use the power of silence, the power of quiet, creating space between the phrases. Make sense? If it doesn't, that's all you're getting, so you may as well say yes, because another example is that about a year and a half ago, I bought this beautiful purple orchid. It bloomed for about a month or 2 months, and then it fell off, and I made a commitment. I'm going to bring this bad boy back to life. I'm going to take care of it for the next round of it blooming. And so I cut it back. They said, cut it back, and I would water it, and nothing's happening. And I'm thinking, this thing is dead. 8, 9 months, nothing. I was going to throw it away, but I decided to just keep it, throw an ice cube in it for time to time. Then I kind of gave up on it. I left it there. So I bought a blue one, and it lasted for about 2 months and fell off. And then they said, if you cut it back deep, it might take a little longer, but it'll bring out a really beautiful flower. And if you cut it shallow, that it'll get back quicker, but maybe not as more beautiful. So I cut the blue one back shorter because I wanted to see it quicker because I thought the thing was dead. So then, I'm not kidding, 13 months later, which was 2 weeks ago, I come into the kitchen, and lo and behold, 2 beautiful purple flowers. It was like a miracle. And I don't have a green thumb, so it was really a miracle. It was it was an Easter miracle. But then I started kind of reading about it, about orchids, and it's called a resting period. A period that looks like nothing's happening, a period that's still, that looks like it's uneventful, and it said many people think it's dead. But what it's actually doing is storing up all the energy and nutrients it needs to let the blossom, let it bloom, let the flower bloom even more beautifully. So isn't that neat? It needs a resting period. It needs a period of quiet, and stillness. And it's that silence and stillness that brings forth. And the longer it is, guess what? The more beautiful and brilliant the color and the flower. Another example. Remember that Paul on the road to Damascus, his conversion, he was blinded. He was an angry man, hateful, didn't like Christians, and got blinded for 3 days. And being blind and not seeing for 3 days, being in that stillness, being pulled away to be more quiet with himself, that when he came out of it, he was converted and passionately and lovingly preached the gospel and is credited for spreading Christianity. But isn't it neat that the quiet and the 3 days literally transformed him? One more example. So Jesus on Good Friday crucified, his lifeless body, dead body, put into a tomb, stone rolled to it, and something in that quiet and in that darkness, we don't know what happened, but something happened. Something miraculous happened in that quiet space, in that stillness, in that darkness, because out of it came life. Out of it came a resurrection, a renewal. And the point I'm making is that we need to create space for quiet and silence because it springs forth greater things. Whether it is the phrase of a song impacting us, the phrase of words because of the space, or the production of a flower, or being changed or transformed or bringing life. That's why it says, be still and know that I am God. It is because the stillness and the quietness is where we get renewed. It is where we get inspired. It is where we find peace. It is when we find joy and clarity and guidance. If we think living is about going fast and doing all this stuff, you want to live more fully? Make space for silence. How much of a role does silence and quiet play in your life? How much of a priority do you have to just pause and sometimes take a deep breath? Pause to meditate before you interact at work, to meditate before you interact with a loved one, to get yourself to a more centered place so that the product or the ideas you share will land and be more meaningful. Blaise Pascal, a French philosopher, once said, all of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to be still and to be alone with themselves. Isn't that cool? Our problems stem from the fact we're all running like chickens with our heads cut off, to being so busy and not pausing to connect with that power, not pausing to connect with that truth, so not pausing to connect with all of the good that is available to us. So I ask you, how much of a priority would you be willing to make to create more space in your life for silence? How committed would you be to pausing on a regular basis and connecting with that same energy and source that brought forth life and flowers that bloom and songs and words that touch? Second thing about living is about knowing that whatever you're going through is not there to destroy your life. It is actually there to help you bring forth the glory of God. Let's look at that story back in the book of John, chapter 9. You remember when one of the disciples said to Jesus, why has this man been born blind? Is it something he did wrong? Or something that his parents did wrong? And Jesus said, no, neither. This has been done so that the glory of God could be made manifested in his life. When things seem to go wrong, we want to blame somebody. We think we've done something wrong, or we think life's unfair. This person did it to me. You know, we think that anytime we're in a struggle or things aren't working well, that it's there to destroy us or rob us or affect. It's an obstacle to our happiness. And the answer to those are no. It is there so that the glory of God could be made manifest through us. When I was 22 years old, I'd been paralyzed in a car accident for a couple of years, and I was just lost. I wasn't going to college. I felt so hopeless about doing or achieving anything, ever being happy again. And I was watching television, and I saw an interview with a 15-year-old boy, and his name was Ryan White. Anybody remember Ryan White? Ryan White contracted HIV through a blood transfusion. And after they'd found that and he had pneumonia and got better, he wanted to go back to school, and they banned him from going to school. The parents, the administration, thought he was a danger to their kids, danger to the school, and they banned him. He wanted to go back to school, and so he had to go to court to get permission to be able to go back to school. And when he came back to school, he was hated. He was bullied. He was called names. People wrote all kinds of things about him, said all kinds of things. They slashed his mother's car, threw rocks and broke windows in their home, and even put a bullet through the front of their door. Ryan White was 15 years old, diagnosed with HIV, given 6 months to live, was hated and bullied. And I saw him being interviewed on the Phil Donahue show. And Phil said to him, "What does it feel like to be bullied and to be hated the way you are?" And he answered by saying this. He said, "I don't think they really hate me. I think they're just afraid. And I understand that they're afraid. You know, they have just let fear get the better of them." He said, "You know, people are afraid of things that are different." And he said, "People are so afraid of different things. I'm really surprised people like dogs, because they're different." And he said, "We'd let a dog in our house, and we'd like a dog, and yet sometimes we won't like someone of another religion. We won't like someone of another race or another color." He said, "I just have something different in my body. And that even though the doctor said it's not dangerous, it is that fear of something different that is preventing people from wanting me to come back to school." Hearing this as a 22-year-old kid struggling with my own stuff, and I wasn't dying, and people weren't hating me, and watching a 15-year-old boy share such insight and maturity and compassion and perspective and courage and wisdom absolutely floored me. I lost it for a second. I thought, wasn't looking at a 15-year-old boy. I was seeing an amazing soul express at the highest level of itself possible. And I sat there as I was in awe of this young man, this beautiful soul, wondered if there was anything like that in me to handle my situation as good as he was handling his situation. You know, he allowed his soul, his true spirit, to literally rise. He expressed the glory of God in that situation. And he knew it wasn't his fault. He didn't go to that place. He just went to using it for the highest and best purpose. You know, I think he didn't want to just go to school for himself. I think he went through that whole process to show people that we're all the same, to have people reduce their fear of what looks and is different. You know, Jesus faced hatred and injustice and betrayal and torture and death. And yet he did it for the glory of God. He did it and allowed his higher self to rise above the conditions and to handle it in a greater way. So what are you struggling with in your life? What feels like it's getting in your way, that's unfair, that isn't right? And can we get to that place that we could realize that that's in my life to help me bring forth the glory of God? Paramahansa Yogananda said the reason we're here, he started Self-Realization Fellowship. He said our work here is to have the realization of our true self. That anything in our lives are there for us, to help us bring forth the glory of God and to have the realization of our true self, just like Ryan White expressed and demonstrated for us. So again, what in your life is stopping you? What in your life is blocking you? What do you think is unfair? What do you think is destroying your peace and happiness? And can you flip the script and actually say to yourself, this is in my life to help me manifest the glory of God. This is in my life to help me manifest the glory of God. Think of something in your mind right now, and let's say that together. This is in my life to help me manifest the glory of God. Take a deep breath, and can you open to that space? One more time. This is in my life to help me manifest the glory of God. And the fact is, there is a spirit in us that is invincible. There is a light in you that no darkness can ever put out. But can you relate to that? Focus on that. Because every one of us has enough to feel sorry for ourselves, to give up, and to complain and whine. We all have that. We all have that. But doing it doesn't help. Would we be able to rise up to that higher level and realize this is being done so the glory of God could be made manifest through me? And I guarantee you, not only will it lift and bless your life, but your demonstration. Ryan White didn't know me. It's going to be 30 years. And yet that young man, the way he showed up, influenced me and thousands others. You have no idea how much of an impact your life has. And by you following your spiritual truth, living at your highest level, you will be doing more good and changing and blessing more lives than you realize. We all have that responsibility. The question is, are we willing to accept that mantle and to switch the script on how we describe things? It's destroying us and unfair to this will help me manifest the glory of God. And finally, we need to look at life and realize how it's trying to teach us to help us adjust, expand, and transform. The reality of life is you are either doing one of two things, contracting or expanding. And so where in your life are you contracting? And where in your life are you expanding? Because I believe life is trying to teach us and calling us to expand, calling us to adjust, calling us to change, calling us to make a powerful decision, calling us to move in a direction that is for our highest good. You know, everybody wants their life to get better, but nobody wants to actually change. Everybody wants their lives to get better, we just don't want to do anything about it. I mean, isn't that for real? Somebody once said, if you want to get something you don't have, you need to show up in a way you haven't shown up before. Show up in a way you haven't thought before. Show up in a way you haven't spoken before or believed before. We tell ourselves this fantasy that my life can change by just sitting here and wishing it, and it isn't. It's calling you to change. It's calling you to transform. It's calling you to expand and to do new things. We have a member of our congregation named Carl, and when he was 60, he had a fantastic life. Great family, great career, great wife. I mean, really, really good. Sold his business, dabbles in a few things, but he's secure, and he's doing pretty well. And we went to get a physical and found out that his liver had a malignant tumor, also cirrhosis, and the only option was a transplant. And a part of the transplant deal was he had to spend 6 months in AA. He loved wine a lot. So when he heard this, he thought, well, let me do the AA thing, and then I'll just go back to, enjoying my wine. His two goals were get a new liver that could handle how much he enjoyed his wine. He just did. He was very honest when he shared this with me. And by the way, everything he shared with me, he gave me permission to say. And so about 2 months into this AA thing, he finds out he's got colon cancer. And you can't have an operation on another cancer while you have other cancer, if that makes sense. So he thought, man, I'm going to go to the bar and have a drink. So while he's heading to the bar, he gets a phone call, and it's his grandkids, and they're all chit-chatting 20 minutes later. And he ends up in his driveway at home. And he's thinking, how'd this happen? And so he thought, I was going to go to the bar. And then he said, forget it. I won't go to the bar. Somehow the colon cancer got cleared up. Somehow he got on the list. Only waited 7 days and got the liver transplant. He was told by his one doctor that he could have drank if he wanted, but chose not to. And chose to attend AA meetings consistently. He also joined a transplant recovery support group where he got support, for the after, but also began being a mentor and a sponsor to other individuals, of families of individuals who, donated, and also those who received. And his life is committed to serving and helping, both through AA and both through the transplant support group. They're even developing a mentorship program. And he ended up changing his love of wine to a love of coffee and has become a barista. For real. He's got roasters in his, and he had a small business for all. Now he's just hooking up friends and family. And I know because I'm one of the people he hooks up. And but so are you, because he donates all of the coffee that we have, that it is donated by him. Isn't that fabulous? So here's the thing. Carl never thought he'd have a liver transplant. Carl never thought he'd have to give up wine. Carl never thought that he would go to AA. Carl never thought he would be a part of a transplant support group. Life was trying to teach him and show him, and he was willing to adjust. He was willing to expand. He was willing to transform. And I will tell you, in his own words, he is as happy as he has ever been and more happy in some ways. It enriched his life because life is trying to show us. Easily we could resist, and he did some resisting. Easily we could resist and miss out on the greatness and the benefits that life is trying to show us. So the question, are you willing to learn? Are you willing to change? Are you willing to be transformed? And are you willing to take those steps that life is showing you to take? So here's the interesting thing. There are transplant games, like Olympics for people with transplants. And so he heard there's a swimming competition, and he used to swim when he was a kid. And so they're going to go to England, he and his wife Kathy, for the transplant games this summer. And he is really thinking about, he's been training for swimming. And he says, based on the times of the people in his age range of transplant folks, what their swimming time is and what his is, he is projecting that he will finish dead last. Dead last. Yeah. I mean, dead last. Now, the good news is, a month ago, it was dead last by 10 seconds. Now it's dead last by 7 seconds, so I'm seeing progress. And my thing for you is it ain't about winning. It's about living. And he is living. He is living more fully. And he chose not to resist, not to hold back, not to say, this is not how I want my life to go. But he went with how life was showing him. And it has lifted him and changed him. Whether you're fat or not, I was happy that Tiger Woods won the Masters last week. And so here's the thing. When Tiger dominated for 15 years, Tiger wasn't the nicest guy in the world, but he was respected because he was the best in the world. He didn't make a lot of friends with some of his fellow golfers, the media. He didn't always talk. He swore a lot. He never high-fived fans during the thing. And so when he won last week, after a decade of struggle, many self-inflicted wounds, and how far he had fallen, what I really loved was watching him hug his kids. What I really loved was the fact that his fellow golfers all waited to congratulate him. Even former Green Jacket, former guys, older guys waited. That Ricky Fowler in an interview said, I really love this Tiger. He's more humble. He's more relatable. He's a really good friend and fun to hang out with. For all the things he's been through, life was trying to show him. And a decade. And sometimes life will show you gently, and sometimes life will hit you with a spiritual 2x4. Sometimes we all need a little bit of tough. But I would say, in many ways, he has allowed life to help him adjust and change and be transformed. I would say that win was better than any of the other wins, and the reason is, look how more whole his life is. Look how much whole he is. Look how much more balanced he is. And to me, that's what's impressive. So where is life trying to show you to make a change? Where is life showing, calling you to step up or to let go or to do whatever it is your life is calling you to do? One of my favorite people in all the world and one of the heroes is Madame Curie, Marie Curie, born in Poland, scientist, married a French scientist. And she was the first woman ever to win. I've mentioned her several times. She's so amazing. First woman back in the early 1900s to win a Nobel Prize. First woman to ever win 2 Nobel Prizes. Only person ever to win 2 Nobel Prizes in 2 different science disciplines, chemistry and physics. Here's what she said. Life isn't easy for any of us, but so what? That's my favorite line, by the way. We must have perseverance and, above all, confidence in ourselves. We must believe that we are gifted for something, and it is that thing that must be attained. And what I love about that is that is the truth. Every one of us has a tough life. There's no easy life. We may make up stories that someone's life is easier but ours, but nobody has it easy. And when she says, so what? It's not about not having compassion. It's not about caring or being insensitive. My definition of when she said life isn't easy, but so what? It's life isn't easy, but don't let it stop you from living. If you've had a death of a loved one, it's not easy, but don't let it stop you from living. If you're going through bankruptcy, don't let it stop you from living. If you're going through a divorce, don't let it stop you from living. You know, if you've got an addiction, don't let it stop you from living. If you have an 80% rotator cuff tear, don't let it stop you from living. Whatever family struggle, whatever life struggle you might be going through, yeah, I know it's not easy, but don't let it stop you from living. Don't let it stop you from paying attention to how life is trying to guide you and show you how to change, how to adapt, how to adjust, and how to be transformed. Because if you pay attention, I guarantee you, your soul and the universe are trying to guide you. Stop resisting it and open yourself to it and let yourself be changed and transformed. So what? Don't let it stop you. And this is one of the powerful messages of Easter. It's a powerful message of teaching us how to be alive and how to live more fully. So there's this FBI agent. You didn't think I'd forget a joke, did you? And he's going all around to these different farms and ranches looking for drugs that are illegally grown. And so he goes to this Montana rancher and says to the rancher, says, look, I got to look around your place. And the old rancher says, okay, but don't go over in that field. And then the agent verbally explodes and says, mister, I have the authority of the federal government to go anywhere I want. He pulls out his badge. You see this badge? You see this badge? This badge gives me the power and authority to go, no questions asked, no answers given. Do you get that? Do you get how powerful I am? And so the farmer just steps back and smiles and just lets him go and just goes on doing his chores. And later the old rancher here screams and spies the agent running desperately from his prize bull that's chasing him and gaining on him. And then so the old rancher drops all of his tools and starts heading for the fence. And he yells at the top of his lungs, your badge! Show him your badge! So, Joseph Murphy's right that what we are looking all for is an experience of being fully alive. And you don't need a badge and you don't need a bull chasing you. The fact is we have all the tools to live life and live it more abundantly. And the resurrection really gives us a wonderful gift to know that we can overcome. And the three things I want you to do this week is make a little space for silence. Know how it enriches. Create some space in the phrases of your life to go deeper and to connect, because what will come forth will be greater than you imagine and have more impact. And secondly, realize whatever's going on, it's not there to punish you. It is there to help you manifest the glory of God. Change the script and the story and the narrative on that and realize the universe is conspiring to help you be better and greater and let the truth of your amazing spiritual self come forth. And finally, pay attention to what life is trying to show you and direct you and lead you to, because it will change and transform your life. Easter is not just a miracle to celebrate and to give thanks for. It is a gift, and it is an invitation that is trying to help us live and live life more abundantly. God bless you all.